Captain Daniel Harper stood in the massive chamber of the Galactic Council and felt very small. The room was huge and filled with strange aliens from different worlds. Behind him stood Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez and Commander Jacob Miller. They wore their best uniforms and tried to look calm. The walls of the chamber were made of some kind of crystal that glowed with soft light. Platforms floated in the air and each one held a different alien species. Some had scales and some had fur, and some looked like nothing Daniel had ever seen before. This was the heart of galactic civilization, and humans had waited 5 years for this moment. Ambassador Helen Carter led the human delegation. She had worked for months to prepare for this meeting. She believed today would be the day when Earth finally became a full member of the galactic community. She stood tall and confident, even though her hands shook just a little. Daniel noticed this because he had served with her for 3 years. He knew she cared deeply about making this work. Earth had only known about aliens for 5 years and everything had moved so fast. First contact had been peaceful and the aliens seemed friendly. They invited Earth to join their council as a limited member. Humans could watch and learn, but could not vote or make decisions. Helen had worked hard to change that. The council speaker was named Vexthor and he was very tall. His body was covered in scales that changed colors like oil on water. He had been the leader of the council for many years. His voice was deep and powerful and everyone listened when he spoke. The translator in Daniel's ear turned the alien words into English. Vexthor raised one clawed hand and the room became silent. All the floating platforms stopped moving and every alien turned to look at the humans. Vexthor began to speak and his words echoed through the chamber. He said the council had reviewed Earth's petition for full membership. He said they had made a decision. Helen stepped forward and her face showed hope. Daniel could see she expected good news. He wished he felt as confident as she looked. Something about the way the aliens watched them made him nervous. It reminded him of the way cats watched mice. Then Vexthor spoke again and everything changed. He said the council denied Earth's petition. He said they had decided to reconsider even the limited membership that Earth already had. The words hit Helen like a physical blow. Her face went pale and she stood very still. A strange sound moved through the chamber. It took Daniel a moment to realize the aliens were laughing at them. Helen found her voice and asked why. She asked what grounds they had for this decision. Her voice stayed steady, even though Daniel could see the shock in her eyes. An alien named Zoranus answered her. This creature looked like a giant insect with too many legs. She made clicking sounds that the translator turned into mocking words. She said humans were primitive. She said they fought wars against each other. She said their technology was old and useless. She said humans had nothing to offer the galactic community. Helen tried to argue. She said humans came in peace. She said they had shared their culture and art and science. She said they had worked hard to prove themselves. Another alien interrupted her. His name was Krendax and he represented something called the Valorian Collective. He said human culture was barbaric. He said their art was simple like a child's drawing. He said their science was thousands of years behind even the youngest races in the council. He said humans were children playing at being adults. Daniel felt anger growing in his chest. His jaw tightened and he forced himself to stay calm. Next to him, Amy's hand moved toward her weapon before Jacob touched her shoulder in warning. They could not do anything here. They were 3 humans surrounded by hundreds of aliens. They could only stand and listen as the council tore apart everything Earth had worked for. Vexthor continued speaking and his tone was cruel. He said humanity should be grateful for what they had been given. He said they had been allowed to observe true civilization. He said expecting more was arrogant for such a young and backward species. Helen kept trying to defend Earth. She said humans had proven themselves capable. She said their scientists had helped with research projects. She said their engineers had built stations in neutral space. Zoranus made that clicking laugh again. She called it menial labor. She said those were simple tasks given to test if humans could follow instructions. She said they had performed adequately and nothing more. She made it sound like humans were servants or slaves. Krendax leaned forward on his floating platform. He said maybe in 1,000 years humans might be worth reconsidering. He said maybe they would evolve beyond their violent ways. He said maybe they would develop something that looked like real technology. Until then, humanity would stay on the edge of galactic society where they belonged. Vexthor made a gesture with his clawed hand. He said the humans were dismissed. He told them to be grateful they could keep their limited observer status. He said many council members had voted to take even that away. The human delegation stood frozen. 5 years of work had been destroyed in minutes. They had not just been denied advancement, they had been humiliated and mocked like stupid animals. The council members talked among themselves and did not bother to lower their voices. Daniel's translator caught pieces of their conversation. They were laughing about humans. One phrase came through clearly. The alien said humans were such an insignificant species. He said they would never amount to anything in the galaxy. The doors behind them opened with a loud boom that sounded final. Helen turned slowly and walked toward the exit. Daniel and the others followed her. The laughter of the council echoed behind them. They walked through the corridors of the alien station in silence. Nobody spoke because there was nothing to say. When they reached their shuttle, Helen sat down heavily. She put her head in her hands. She whispered that 5 years of work was gone. 5 years destroyed in just a few minutes. Jacob spoke quietly. He said the council never intended to accept humans. He said this was about putting Earth in its place. Amy stared out the window at the alien city below. She repeated the words they had heard. She said the aliens called them primitive and backward and insignificant. Daniel felt something cold settle in his chest. It was not anger yet. It was something else. It was the same feeling he had when someone told him he could not do something. It was determination, and it was dangerous. He asked Ambassador Carter what they should do now. She looked up and he saw her shock was turning into something harder. She said they would go home. She said they would report exactly what happened to Earth Command. Amy asked what would happen after that. Helen's eyes became hard and cold. She said they would go home and then they would remind the Galactic Council why humans had survived for so long. Earth was a dangerous planet that tried to kill humans every day. Humans had survived and thrived anyway. She said they would show the Council what happens when you underestimate humanity. The shuttle docked with their ship. As Daniel walked through the corridors, he could not stop thinking about the Council's laughter. They thought humans were nothing. They thought humanity could be dismissed and mocked and forgotten. Daniel knew something they did not know. He knew that humans did not give up. He knew that humans did not forget. The Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake today. They had humiliated humanity, and now they would learn the cost of that mistake. They would learn that humans were not insignificant. They were about to learn that lesson the hard way. 3 months had passed since the humiliation at Zentara Prime, and Fleet Admiral Richard Cole stood before the United Nations Security Council in Geneva. The room was packed with the most powerful leaders on Earth and representatives from Mars and Luna colonies. Everyone knew this meeting would change everything. Helen Carter finished her report, and her voice still carried anger as she described every insult and every mocking laugh from the Galactic Council. When she finished, nobody spoke for a long moment. The silence felt heavy and dangerous. President Lisa Morgan of the United Earth Government spoke first. She made it very clear what had happened. The Council called humans primitive and backward and insignificant. They denied Earth membership not because of any real concerns, but because of pure arrogance. Trade Minister Paul Henderson added more bad news. He said the Council was blocking Earth's trade agreements. Any species that wanted to do business with humans faced economic pressure from the Council. The aliens were actively working to isolate Earth and make sure humanity stayed weak and dependent. Director Karen Walsh from Earth Intelligence stepped forward with data. She said this was not just about Earth. The Galactic Council maintained power through a strict hierarchy. New species were kept dependent and weak. Their technology was suppressed and their economies were controlled. The Council feared any race that might challenge their authority. They wanted to stay on top forever, and they crushed anyone who tried to rise up. Admiral Cole added that the Council had grown lazy and complacent. He said the major Council races had not fought a real war in over 300 years. Their military forces were mostly for show. They relied on intimidation rather than actual combat ability. General Marcus Stone pulled up holographic displays that showed alien ships. He said Earth had spent 5 years analyzing every piece of Council technology they could access. The alien ships looked impressive but were designed more for appearance than function. They had heavy energy shields and decorative armor, but their weapons were not as dangerous as they looked. Their tactics were outdated because they assumed overwhelming technological superiority would always win. Admiral Cole explained that the biggest advantage the Council had was their energy shield technology. It was far more advanced than anything Earth possessed. Their ships could absorb tremendous amounts of damage from conventional weapons. President Morgan asked if there was a weakness. Admiral Cole smiled and said there was. He explained that the Council had never faced an opponent who thought like humans. They had never fought against human creativity and determination. Dr. Raymond Foster stood up and introduced himself as the head of Human Defense Research Initiative. He said his team had been working on something secret. It was called Project Wraith, and development started right after first contact. Earth's leaders knew they might need to defend themselves someday, and they had prepared. The holographic display changed to show a new type of warship. It looked sleek and angular, and completely different from anything in Earth's current fleet. Dr. Foster called it the Vanguard-class strike frigate. He said it used a revolutionary approach to space combat. While Council ships relied on energy shields and energy weapons, Earth had gone in a different direction. General Stone explained that humans had focused on kinetic weapons. These were railguns and coil guns and lots of missiles. Tests showed that Council shields were excellent against energy beams but far less effective against high-speed physical projectiles. A solid chunk of metal moving at incredible speed could punch right through their defenses. Admiral Cole continued the briefing and described something called the Wraith Drive. It was a short, range faster-than-light system that allowed combat jumps. Council ships used similar drives to travel between star systems, but their drives were too slow to use during battle. The human version was different. It could engage during combat. President Morgan asked if that meant ships could teleport during a fight. Cole confirmed they could jump short distances. It was enough to avoid enemy fire and reposition for attack runs. The Council would never see it coming. Secretary of Defense Patricia Graham asked if they were proposing war with the Galactic Council. Admiral Cole said no. He said they were proposing a demonstration that humanity would not be dismissed or humiliated. They had identified key targets. These were Council military outposts and trade stations and communication hubs in neutral space. All were legitimate military targets under galactic warfare conventions. If Earth struck these targets, it would send a message. Humanity could not be ignored or bullied or treated as insignificant. Helen spoke up and said they were already at war. The Council fired the first shot when they decided to crush any hope of Earth being treated fairly. They were actively working to strangle human development and trade and future. The only question was whether humanity would fight back or accept being second-class citizens forever. President Morgan looked at Admiral Cole and asked how many ships Earth had ready. Cole said they had 12 Vanguard-class frigates completed with 20 more in final construction. They also had a new carrier called the UNS Defiance that could deploy fighter wings with the same advanced technology. The president asked about crews. Cole said every person would be a volunteer. Everyone being asked to fly these missions knew the risks. They were doing it because they believed in what they were fighting for. President Morgan walked to the window and looked out over the city. She said she had promised to protect Earth and all its people when she took office. The Galactic Council was not just insulting humans. They were actively working to make sure humanity never rose above the position they had been assigned. She turned back and her face looked hard and determined. She said Earth did not start this. Humans came to the aliens in peace and offered friendship and cooperation. The Council responded with mockery and economic warfare. President Morgan said she wanted full operational plans on her desk in 48 hours. Earth was going to teach the Galactic Council a lesson they would never forget. Nobody humiliates humanity and expects no consequences. Admiral Cole saluted and confirmed he understood. As the meeting ended, Helen approached the Admiral and asked if he really thought Earth could win. Cole smiled, but his eyes stayed cold. He said humanity had been fighting since living in caves. Humans battled nature and disease and each other and every challenge their planet threw at them. Humans did not become the dominant species on Earth by giving up when someone said they were not good enough. Helen pointed out that the Council had hundreds of worlds and thousands of ships. Cole replied that Earth had something the Council lost long ago. Humans remembered how to really fight. The Council was about to learn why you should never underestimate a species that climbed to the top of the food chain on a death world. Helen asked when the strike would happen. Cole said 2 weeks. The Council was holding their grand assembly on Zentara Prime. All the major delegates would be there along with their flagship vessels. It was a celebration of their power and unity. Helen realized they were going to attack during the celebration. Admiral Cole's smile turned colder. He said they were going to crash the party. and when they were done, the Council would never look at humans the same way again. In orbit above Earth, the shipyards worked day and night without stopping. The new fleet was preparing for war. Weapons were loaded and systems were tested and crews drilled constantly. Humanity was going to war, and the Galactic Council had no idea what was coming for them. Captain Daniel Harper stood on the bridge of the UNS Valkyrie and watched the other ships gather around him. They were at Rally Point Theta, which was 3 light years away from Zentara Prime. 11 other Vanguard frigates floated in space beside his ship, and the big carrier UNS Defiance sat in the center of the formation. Every ship was ready for battle. Daniel felt his heart beating fast, but his hand stayed steady on the command chair. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez checked her displays and reported that all ships were ready. Weapons were armed and the Wraith drives were charged. Fighter squadrons on the Defiance were prepared to launch. Commander Jacob Miller brought up a holographic map of the Zentara system. He said intelligence confirmed the Grand Assembly was happening right now. 32 Council warships were in orbit around Zentara Prime, including 7 dreadnoughts. They sat in ceremonial formation with shields at minimum power and weapons offline. Lieutenant Craig Bennett said they were not expecting any threat. Why would they when nobody had challenged the Council in centuries? Daniel said quietly that everything was about to change. He ordered communications to open a fleet-wide channel. His voice went out to every ship in the human fleet. He told them they were about to do something that would change human history forever. They were going to show the Galactic Council that humanity demanded respect. Humans were not asking for it or begging for it. They were taking it. He paused and looked at the faces of his crew reflected in the windows. He said the Council called them primitive and backward and insignificant. Today they would prove the Council wrong. Today humanity would show the galaxy who they really were. He ended by saying this was for Earth and for their future and for every human who was ever told they were not good enough. The crew responded together and their voices were strong. Admiral Cole's voice came through from the Defiance. He ordered all ships to execute the jump. Reality twisted as the Wraith drives engaged. Unlike normal, faster-than-light travel, which was slow and smooth, the Wraith drive was instant. One moment they floated in empty space, and the next moment they appeared in orbit above Zentara Prime, right in the middle of the Galactic Council fleet. Chaos erupted immediately. Alarms blared across alien vessels as they detected the human ships appearing among them. Daniel heard panicked voices on the Council channels. The aliens had no idea what was happening. Daniel gave the order to open fire and told all ships to engage. The Valkyrie's railguns fired and sent tungsten slugs flying at nearly the speed of light. The slugs hit the nearest Council dreadnought, and the alien shields barely slowed them down. The Council's shields were designed to stop energy beams, not solid projectiles. The slugs punched through the pretty armor plating like it was paper and tore into the ship's interior. Around them, the other Vanguard frigates unleashed their weapons. Missiles streaked through space with their guidance systems locked on Council vessels. The Council ships tried to activate their defensive systems, but they were caught completely unprepared. The first minefield activated and thousands of hidden canisters released clouds of ball bearings and metal fragments. Each piece moved at incredible speed. The Council shields designed to stop energy weapons did almost nothing against the kinetic storm. The metal fragments hit like shotgun blasts and tore through the Council formation. 3 cruisers took critical damage and their shields overloaded from the sheer number of impacts. Amy reported that an enemy dreadnought was trying to return fire and bringing its main guns online. Daniel ordered the jump. The Wraith drive pulsed and the Valkyrie vanished. It reappeared 3,000 kilometers away behind a cluster of Council frigates. Daniel's crew had practiced this move hundreds of times. The Council had never seen anything like it. Daniel commanded his crew to fire all batteries. The Valkyrie's weapons erupted again and 3 Council frigates took critical hits. One ship's reactor exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up space. On the Defiance, Admiral Cole watched as his fighter squadrons launched. 60 small craft piloted by Earth's best screamed toward the Council fleet. These fighters were not like the large, heavily shielded Council fighters. Human fighters were small and fast and armed with missiles designed to overwhelm shields through numbers. Wing Commander Sarah Blake led her squadrons into the chaos. She told all fighters to break by wings and engage. She said to show the Council what Earth's pilots could do. The fighters scattered with each wing targeting different Council vessels. The Council ships were designed for battles between large capital ships. They had no defense against swarms of small, fast-moving attackers. Sarah led her wing against a council cruiser that was trying to bring its shields to full power. She told all wings to fire on her mark. 20 missiles launched at the same time and converged on a single point on the cruiser's shield. The shield held for a moment, then collapsed under the concentrated attack. The remaining missiles slammed into the hull and crippled the ship's engines. Amy reported that the council fleet was trying to form a defensive perimeter. 3 dreadnoughts were moving to block the human exit vector. Jacob observed with a grim smile that the council thought humans were trying to escape. They still did not understand. Daniel ordered communications to patch him through to the council flagship. A moment later, the confused face of council speaker Vexthor appeared on screen. Behind him, alarms were sounding and crew members rushed to battle stations. Daniel introduced himself as Captain Daniel Harper of the United Earth Navy. He asked if humans were still insignificant. Vexthor's scales had lost their color and his eyes showed fear. He hissed that this was an act of war. Daniel replied coldly that this was not war. This was a lesson. He said the council wanted to keep humanity in its place and ensure they never challenged the comfortable hierarchy. He told Vexthor that the council made a mistake. They humiliated humanity, and humans do not forget. Vexthor said Earth could not win because the council had thousands of ships across hundreds of systems. Daniel agreed that might be true, but said right now in this moment, humans were winning. He said every species in the galaxy was watching. They were seeing the mighty Galactic Council, with all their power and technology, being torn apart by the humans they dismissed as insignificant. Daniel leaned forward and said Vexthor would send a message to every council member and every allied species in every world under their control. The message would say that humanity demanded to be treated as equals. No more economic blockades and no more interference with human trade and no more looking down on them. Vexthor asked what would happen if they refused. Daniel said then Earth would visit every council world the same way they visited Zentara Prime today. Humans would keep hitting them until the council either gave them respect or collapsed completely. Admiral Cole's voice came through on the fleet channel. He said all ships had made their point and ordered preparation for extraction jump. The Defiance launched a final spread of missiles not at council ships but at orbital platforms around Zentara Prime. The explosions lit up the planet's night side so everyone on the surface could see the attack. Daniel told Vexthor this was his only warning. Next time they met, humanity would be at the negotiating table as equals, or they would meet on the battlefield. The choice was theirs. He cut the connection as reality twisted again. The human fleet vanished as suddenly as it appeared. Behind them they left 7 destroyed council warships and 15 heavily damaged vessels, and hundreds of stunned council members. Throughout the galaxy, news of the attack spread like wildfire. One truth became clear to every species. Humanity was no longer insignificant. The holographic display in the war room aboard the UNS Defiance showed the entire galactic network exploding with activity. News of the attack on Zentara Prime had spread across 1,000 worlds in just a few hours. Admiral Cole watched the feeds with Helen Carter and the gathered ship captains. Every channel and every news service and every communication hub was discussing the same thing. Earth's strike had changed everything forever. Director Karen Walsh reported from Earth through a secure link. She said the Zentara attack was dominating all galactic media. The Council tried to downplay what happened, but too many species had witnessed it. Independent observers and trade ships and even some Council members themselves were sharing footage of the battle. On one screen, an alien news commentator spoke in excited tones. The translation software turned their words into clear English. The commentator said for the first time in 3 centuries, someone had struck directly at the Galactic Council. The humans who were denied full membership just months ago had penetrated the heart of Council space and inflicted significant damage. Another feed showed Council military analysts trying to explain how the attack happened. They talked about human ships using a form of combat capable faster than light travel they had never encountered before. The humans appeared and struck and vanished before Council defenses could respond. Their shields, which were designed to counter energy weapons, proved useless against kinetic projectiles. Jacob said with satisfaction that the best part was watching the Council try to maintain their superiority complex while explaining how humans kicked their teeth in. Helen said it was more than that and told them to look at the peripheral species. These were the ones the Council kept under their control, just like they tried to do with Earth. She pulled up several feeds from species that held limited membership status. The tone was very different from Council propaganda. One commentator asked if this could be their chance. If humans could challenge the council, perhaps others could demand fair treatment as well. Another said that for generations they had accepted council dominance. But seeing humans who were deemed primitive just yesterday strike such a blow made them wonder why they accepted this hierarchy. Karen said that was what terrified the council. Not the military defeat, though, that was embarrassing enough. It was the political implications. Earth had inspired other species to question council authority. Admiral Cole pulled up reports from Earth intelligence. The council was mobilizing and pulling ships from across their territory. Current estimates suggested they were assembling a fleet of over 200 vessels. Captain Jennifer Martin of the UNS Scorpion stated flatly that they were coming for Earth. Cole confirmed this without question. The council could not let this challenge go unanswered. If they did, their whole power structure would collapse. Daniel asked how long they had. Cole said 2 weeks, maybe 3. It took time to coordinate that many ships across such vast distances. Helen studied the strategic map and asked if Earth could win against those numbers. Cole admitted they could not win in a straight fight, but said they were not going to fight the council straight. He pulled up Earth's solar system with markers showing defensive positions. They had spent the last 2 weeks since Zentara preparing. Every asteroid belt and every moon and every orbital station had been militarized. They were turning the entire solar system into a fortress. General Stone's image appeared in the holographic display transmitting from Earth Defense Command. He said they had deployed over 10,000 automated defense platforms. Each one carried missiles and railguns. They had also seeded the approach vectors with minefields. Cole continued and explained the council expected humans to meet them in open space. Instead, Earth would draw them into the solar system and make them fight on human terms. Every ship and every platform and every defensive position would use the same kinetic weapons that worked so well at Zentara. Karen added that Earth was not alone. Since the attack, they had been contacted secretly by 17 other species. These species were not willing to openly oppose the council yet, but they were providing intelligence and logistical support, and in a few cases, weapons technology. Helen said the council thought they were isolating Earth. Instead, they created the focal point for everyone who was tired of council dominance. Admiral Cole looked at his assembled captains and told them to make no mistake. This would be the fight of their lives. The council was bringing overwhelming force. They wanted to make an example of Earth to show every species in the galaxy what happened when you challenged their authority. Daniel asked what the plan was. Cole smiled coldly and said the council was predictable. They had spent centuries as the unchallenged power. They forgot how to fight an enemy that did not play by their rules. Earth was going to use that against them. He brought up tactical simulations. The council would approach Earth expecting orbital bombardment, followed by ground invasion if necessary. They would try to force surrender through overwhelming force. Instead, humans would hit them with every asymmetric tactic they could devise. Daniel said they would use Wraith drive hit and run attacks. Cole confirmed exactly that. They would use their mobility advantage to strike and disengage and strike again. They would bleed the council fleet slowly. They would make every kilometer of space the council advanced cost them ships. They would turn this from a battle of overwhelming force into a grinding war of attrition. Jennifer asked quietly what would happen if they lost. Cole replied that they would make damn sure the council remembered the cost. But he said they were not going to lose because they had something the council did not have. Someone asked what that was. Cole said conviction. Every human on Earth and Mars and Luna and in this fleet knew what they were fighting for. They fought for their future and their freedom and their right to be treated as equals. The council was fighting to maintain their power structure. Humans were fighting for survival. Helen nodded slowly and said she was heading back to Earth. If the council fleet was coming, someone needed to coordinate with the civilian government. They needed to plan evacuations and hardened bunkers and resistance planning if the council breached orbital defenses. Cole said hopefully it would not come to that. Helen finished his thought and said, but they would prepare for it anyway. That was what humans did. Over the next 2 weeks, the solar system transformed completely. Mars and Luna shipyards worked around the clock, pushing out more frigates and more fighters and more weapons platforms. Earth's population mobilized in a way not seen since the Great Wars of the 20th century. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council fleet assembled. 200 warships, including 20 dreadnoughts carrying enough firepower to reduce a planet to molten rock. Council Speaker Vexthor himself took command. He was determined to personally oversee humanity's defeat. As the Council fleet prepared to depart for Earth, Vexthor addressed the assembled forces. He said the humans had dared to strike at them. They had embarrassed the Council in front of the entire galaxy. He said they would show the humans the price of such arrogance. They would show every species what happened when you challenged Council authority. The fleet began its journey confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had no idea what was waiting for them at Earth. The Council believed their numbers and technology guaranteed victory. They were about to learn that humans did not surrender and did not break, and most importantly did not fight fair when their survival was at stake. The Galactic Council fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system, in a formation designed to intimidate. 200 warships spread across space in perfect geometric patterns with their shields glowing with power and their weapons ready to fire. On the bridge of the Council flagship, Eternal Dominion speaker Vexthor looked at Earth through the viewscreen. It was a small blue world and the third planet from an unremarkable star. This was home to the species that dared challenge the Council. Vexthor ordered the message sent. Across all frequencies, the Council's ultimatum broadcast. It said humans of Earth had attacked Council forces without provocation. They had violated the peace that lasted for centuries. The message demanded immediate surrender. Earth must dismantle their military forces and accept Council occupation and governance. If they refused, the Council would reduce their world to ash. In the war room beneath NORAD, President Morgan listened to the ultimatum with Admiral Cole and General Stone and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. When it finished, she looked at the assembled leaders and asked about their status. Cole said all defensive platforms were online. The fleet was positioned. Ground-based defenses were ready. Every human in the system knew what was at stake. President Morgan told him to send their response. Cole nodded to the communications officer. The president's face appeared on every screen in the Council fleet. She addressed Speaker Vexthor directly. She said he called their defense of human dignity an attack without provocation. She said he conveniently forgot the Council's years of economic warfare and diplomatic humiliation and systematic efforts to ensure humanity remained subjugated. She said the Council came to Earth's system expecting easy victory because they believed humans were primitive and weak. The president's expression became hard as stone. She said Vexthor was about to learn the most important lesson about humanity. Humans do not surrender, they do not bow, and they sure as hell do not let anyone tell them they are not good enough. She told him if he wanted Earth to come and take it. The transmission ended. On the Eternal Dominion, Vexthor's scales turned dark with anger. He called humans foolish primitives. He ordered the forward fleet to advance and show them the price of defiance. The Council fleet began its approach, moving in 3 waves. The first wave of 50 heavy cruisers accelerated toward Earth's outer system. Amy reported from her station on the Valkyrie that contact would happen in 30 seconds. The ship was positioned with the rest of the human fleet behind Saturn's rings. Daniel commanded his crew to stay steady and let the Council ships come to them. The Council cruisers passed Jupiter's orbit still in perfect formation, with shields at maximum power. They expected to brush aside whatever defenses humans had prepared. The first minefield activated. Thousands of hidden canisters released their payloads, not explosive charges but clouds of ball bearings and metal fragments, with each piece moving at incredible velocity. The Council shields designed to stop energy weapons barely slowed the kinetic swarm. Like shotgun blasts, the fragments tore through the Council formation. 3 cruisers took critical hits and their shields overloaded from the sheer volume of impacts. General Stone ordered all platforms to open fire from Earth Defense Command. Hidden among asteroids and on moons and in orbital stations throughout the system, automated weapons platforms came online. Railguns launched tungsten slugs. Missile batteries released their payloads. The space around the Council fleet became a storm of kinetic death. Admiral Cole commanded the human fleet to engage. The ships emerged from behind Saturn with wraith drives flashing as they jumped directly into the Council formation. The Vanguard frigates opened fire at point-blank range and their weapons overwhelmed Council shields. Through sheer concentrated force, the Defiance launched its fighters, and Wing Commander Sarah Blake led her squadrons into the chaos. She told all wings to hit the capital ships and make every shot count. The Council fleet expected a conventional battle of formation warfare. Instead, they found themselves in a 3-dimensional brawl where human ships appeared and disappeared at random. Automated platforms fired from every angle. Small fighters swarmed their larger vessels like angry insects. Vexthor commanded the second wave to move forward and destroy the automated platforms. The second wave of 75 warships, including several dreadnoughts, accelerated past the struggling first wave. They opened fire on the defensive platforms, and their energy weapons finally found targets their shields could effectively counter. Platforms died by the dozens, exploding in brilliant flashes. But for every platform destroyed, 2 more seemed to activate. Humans had seeded the entire solar system with defenses. Vexthor ordered the third wave to advance to Earth orbit and prepare orbital bombardment. The remaining 75 ships, which were the Council's elite forces, pushed past the fighting and headed straight for Earth. Amy tracked their movement and reported that the main force was breaking through toward Earth. Daniel ordered all ships to execute fallback position and converge on Earth. This was where humanity would make its final stand. The human fleet jumped away from the scattered Council forces and reappeared in Earth orbit. Around them, the planet's final defenses activated. Every orbital station and every moon base and every ship in the system concentrated around humanity's homeworld. The Council's third wave arrived in perfect formation with their dreadnoughts leading the assault. These were the Council's finest ships, and each one was more powerful than anything in Earth's fleet. Jacob reported they were charging their main guns and preparing to fire on population centers. Admiral Cole opened a fleet-wide channel from the Defiance. He told all ships and all platforms to hit the Council with everything they had. He said this was for Earth. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. The human fleet did not retreat or attempt to flee. Instead, every ship and every platform and every weapon system launched a simultaneous attack. The Wraith drives allowed human frigates to jump directly into the Council formation and fire at point-blank range before jumping away. Fighters released their entire missile loads in coordinated strikes that overwhelmed shields through sheer numbers. The orbital platforms, now numbering in the thousands, created an endless stream of kinetic fire. The Council ships designed for elegant formation warfare found themselves in a knife fight. Their powerful shields meant nothing when human ships jumped inside their defensive perimeter. Their heavy weapons could not track targets that disappeared and reappeared randomly. A Council officer reported that Dreadnought Valor's shield was breaking formation with collapsed shields and venting atmosphere. Another said Cruiser Divine Right reported engine failure and 3 destroyers were adrift. Fighter wings were unable to establish defensive screens because human fighters were too fast and too numerous. Vexthor watched in growing horror as his carefully planned assault dissolved into chaos. He said it was impossible. They had superior numbers and superior technology. He asked how humans were doing this. One of his officers said quietly that humans were fighting for their survival, while the Council was just fighting to maintain power. Daniel brought the Valkyrie around for another attack run. They had taken hits and shield generators were overloaded, and hull breaches on multiple decks, but the ship kept fighting. He ordered his crew to target a dreadnought with a full spread. Someone said their shields were down, and if the Council hit them, they were finished. Daniel said then they better not get hit and ordered them to fire. The Valkyrie's remaining weapons launched at the Council dreadnought. At the same moment, Sarah Blake's fighter wing hit the same ship from the opposite direction. The combined attack finally overwhelmed the dreadnought's shields. Amy shouted that the ship was breaking apart. The massive Council vessel exploded in a cascade of secondary detonations, and the shock waves scattered nearby Council ships. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human forces, outnumbered nearly 3-1, were winning through superior tactics and mobility and desperate determination. On the Eternal Dominion, alarms blared constantly. Vexthor stared at the tactical display showing his fleet being systematically destroyed. An officer said they had lost 40% of their forces. The first and second waves were in full retreat. The third wave had taken critical casualties. They must withdraw. Vexthor said no. They could not show weakness to primitives. The officer said human ships were targeting the Dominion directly. Vexthor saw 6 human frigates appearing in perfect formation around his flagship. All 6 fired simultaneously. The Eternal Dominion shuddered as kinetic rounds slammed into its shields. The shield generators, already strained from hours of combat, began to fail. An officer shouted that shield collapse was imminent. Daniel Harper's face appeared on Vexthor's view screen. The human captain's uniform was scorched and blood ran from a cut on his forehead, but his eyes were fierce. Daniel asked if the Council still thought humans were insignificant. He said this was Vexthor's last chance. Order the fleet to retreat or they would finish this. Vexthor looked at his tactical display. Over 90 council ships were destroyed or disabled. His fleet, which was the pride of the council, was being defeated by humans. By the species he dismissed as primitive and backward.